Good afternoon. Perhaps if you're in the Pacific time zone, it's still the morning. Good morning. My name is Rod Lidke. I'm the CEO of CS Week, and I'd like to welcome you to our third Tuesday webinar series. These occur on the third Tuesday of each month at this time. And this webinar series we've entitled the CS Week Marketplace, and here we tap the expertise of industry experts within our marketplace to present a topic. Today's topic is real-time data, the key to simultaneously improving your customers' perception of your operation and your corporate performance. A couple of quick reminders. CS Week will be April 29 through May 3 of next year. We will be in the Tampa Convention Center in beautiful Tampa, Florida. We have recently updated our website that our keynote speaker for next year will be Dr. Robert Ballard. If that's a familiar name, he is the fellow who found the Titanic, among other things. So he's a deep water exploration person. Another quick reminder is that now is a good time to be thinking about expanding excellence awards and the projects that you've completed or will complete soon at your utility companies for this year and submitting those projects for our Expanding Excellence Awards. So a couple of other points is that during this session today, at any time that you would like to ask a question, please do so by using that box in the lower right corner of your screen. If you'll type it in there, we will leave those questions there until the end, and then I will ask those questions of Jason today. And just as a reminder, this session, as all of our webinars, are recorded, and you can replay them at any time by going to our website. So to introduce our speaker today, Jason Bethke. Jason is the Vice President of Fathom. During his tenure, he has led Global Water's construction, asset management, and GIS initiatives. In addition, he oversaw customer service and billing and spearheaded the deployment of Fathom's geographical information, asset management, and advanced metering infrastructure systems. His significant contributions to Fathom platform produced the industry-leading work order management system that links GIS data with customer data to ensure every meter is accounted for and invoiced. Prior to joining Global Water in 2007, Jason served as a water and wastewater industry in the wastewater industry as a consultant. He holds a master's degree in business and in engineering from Arizona State University and graduated from the University of Illinois, Urbana, with a degree in civil engineering. So on that note, I'd like to turn it over to you, Jason, and go ahead and lead us through your material today.
Okay, great. Thanks, Rod. Well, I'm glad to see some interest in the topic. Hopefully, you all can see my slides here now. Really, this presentation is two parts. The first part really focusing on sort of macro trends evolving in the water utility industry and the customers it serves, and really a bit of the story about how we came to see those trends. And then the second part of the presentation really focuses on hard data to demonstrate the impacts of real-time data in your utilities and hopefully provide some information that utilities can use in their various business cases. So what we're really focused on today is walking you through a bit of a story around how data and really real-time data can facilitate a data-rich utility, which we know increases customer satisfaction, reduces operational costs, and can create added revenue inside your utilities. So we thought it would be helpful because I think Global Water and myself both have a bit of a unique story around how we came to how really a civil engineer with about a dozen years of water and wastewater engineering experience really became fascinated by the possibilities of demand-side management, which ultimately led us to engage the customer fully. So that story for us really starts in Maricopa, Arizona. Now, Maricopa, Arizona was one of the fastest growing communities in the U.S. during the housing boom, and it really spawned the development of Global Water, which now is 14 regulated utilities that cover about 550 square miles. And then Fathom, which is a software as a service business to really help provide smart water and these stories that I'll walk you through today, this data-rich utility to utilities that simply can't afford to do it on their own. So it's a bit about us, but because of that speed, we wound up doing things a bit differently. And so you can imagine, as I was the director of engineering and global, when we were growing at 1,000 homes a month or so, that it was a struggle to build enough infrastructure to really keep up with demand. And so we were doing everything we could associated with recycled water as well. And Maricopa, Arizona is in the middle of a desert. So we were doing lots around recycled water, but still it got us thinking about how can we build just less infrastructure, and how could we engage really customers in that process. So was there a way that we could address our need to build more infrastructure by essentially getting folks to use less, which we knew would require them to change behaviors. And so as we looked at water from utility, and this is really from our 5th grade learning, we know there's lots of water in the world. We also know that there is very little water that's available for drinking. And what we've seen in the last several years as emerging trends is that scarcity around water continues to be on front page news, and the volatility of that supply really is increasing. And you've seen it coming from areas of droughts and floods and things of this nature, but really what that requires for the utility industry is to build more infrastructure, and really building more infrastructure to facilitate more consumption of water just wasn't something that really was a compelling life mission, if you will. And so what we started to look at was demand-side management. And so as we started to look at demand-side management, this is a quote from Peter Glick. It says, "A key to improving efficiency is understanding where, when, and why we use water." And it got me thinking in particular about, do I have enough information as a water utility to actually understand this question? If I was going to drive demand-side management, I needed to understand where, when, and why we use water. And I think widely as an engineer, we often take all the water we use in a utility and divide it by the total number of customers we think are living in the area, and we come up with a 150 gallon per capita per day usage number, and then we apply that to all our designs. And so really what was apparent to us in this process was, if we wanted to impact demand-side management, we really needed better data. And we also needed to understand who, and change a bit of who we is in this sentence. And so when we first read this, it was we as the utility need more information. And in reality, what we're asking is customers to change their behaviors around demand-side management. So the we we're talking about here is the customer. And so it was interesting from our perspective that not only were we looking for more information and more data, but as a general trend throughout the world, people are looking for more data. And so this is just a graphic around how much data is being consumed and the rate at which that is growing for people to manage more and more tasks. And so you can see in 2010 it was very little, but by 2015 it's predicted to be 7,000 petabytes per month of data being consumed, in much more in the smartphone area than in sort of the traditional areas. So the point here being, we needed more data from a utility perspective, and our customers were looking for more data really around everything. And so there were also drivers happening inside the water utility industry, because we saw rates increasing rapidly from a water perspective. Now those are driven by things like increasing regulation and aging infrastructure and power costs and all kinds of things, but they were increasing much, much faster than other utility sectors. And so we believe that as rates continue to rise, customers will demand more data about their water because they need to manage that information and manage their bills. So what's great about this is not only are we as a utility looking for information, but we also were aligned that customers were looking for more information. And what was quickly apparent in this process was that as we provided more information to customers, really access to that data, it resulted in a behavior change. It resulted in conservation. And so as we gave customers more and more data through smartphones and websites and people being able to see that real-time information, it resulted in conservation. And that's been, I think, now widely accepted through university studies. So this one is from California State University and basically showed a 14% reduction just by giving people instantaneous feedback on their water consumption. A fairly straightforward thing to do with things like advanced metering infrastructure of today and some of the advanced customer information system platforms. I also saw it happen in our own utilities. So this is a trend of how we were able to move water use per connection down over, obviously, several years through using technologies like AMI and real-time information to customers. And so not only is it being proven by utility researchers, we're actually seeing it in practice happen in operating utilities. So this is great because what we're seeing is people are demanding more data. If we give it to them, it actually changes their behavior. The people are looking, customers are looking at data in a way that they're asking for more of it at a more and more rapid rate. And so really this question of how do we make it better? Because if we can change behavior by giving people's data, then maybe if we can give them personalized data, that will drive even more behavior changes that are beneficial to the utility. And so the first question here is how much water do I use, which has always been sort of an interesting question, but not very useful to the customer because they had nothing to compare it to. And so now talk about data from the perspective of how do I provide that information to customers such that I can compare it to others, give them a bit of competition, a bit of comparison, a frame of reference for how much water they use. And they quickly get to a spot where you start to talk about how much water they should use or a goal to use water. And if you then enhance that information coming to customers through weather data, evapotranspiration calculations, breaking it out between inside uses and outside uses, you can create a feedback loop that really engages customers, gets them coming back to your utilities, and furthers this behavior change that ultimately results in additional revenue and reduced costs and higher customer satisfaction scores for the utility. So as we talked about, this is actually happening now in many utilities where people are demanding more data. They're actually getting it. Their customer service scores are going up, and as a result, the operating costs are going down in many of these utilities. But what it also drives, as we improve this customer experience, is that we're forced to now give customers that information really where they want it, when they want it, and in sort of what device they're looking for. So now they're looking for it in web and smartphones. And this is an article from Jesse Burst on 6 Things Utilities Don't Know About Customers. This is really that quote, is that we're looking for more and more personalized data, and we're looking for it in lots of different places. So what happens so we believe what's happening for the customers is that if I want to engage these customers and how they're comparing us to the industry, and their expectations are changing so rapidly that they're now comparing us not to utilities anymore, but really to service providers. And so they're now comparing us to banks, and Apple, and Amazon, and the cell phone industry about how exactly we're providing the services. And as utilities, so far, we may or may not be equipped to do that. And so as we walk through this journey as global and as we started focusing on customer behavior change, it was clear that we could change customers' behavior if we could get them the data, but that we were going to be compared in our service delivery to the likes of Apple and Amazon and the cell phone companies. And so, quite frankly, it was a little disappointing because as the water utility industry looks, there's 52,000 fragmented water utilities, all with disparate meter reading systems and AMI systems and customer information systems, all with increasingly limited resources because we need to fund things like additional infrastructure and water quality improvements. And so the idea that we were going to individually all compete with the likes of Amazon, in our customers' minds now, that's exactly what we're doing, was a little daunting. And so really started looking at, well, how do you do that such that you can get these benefits, so that you can get customers to engage with you when you're really competing with Apple and Chase Bank and Wells Fargo and the likes of these massive companies, really at a drastic size disadvantage. And really the answer we came to through that process was around data. This is the piece, sorry, about the customer service experience. So these are sort of the things that you hear from the likes of Apple and Amazon and Zappos and how you need to treat customers. It really is about providing this world-class customer service, really exceeding customer expectations, knowing more about them than they know about themselves. For instance, I didn't know I wanted an iPhone until I was shown one. And then giving customers what they want, when they want it, how they want it, in a way that they're looking for it. And to focus on reliability and consistency. This is something utilities have done very, very well. But as we look to that answer for how do we compete in this industry, how do we compete for customers' time, that answer is data. It turns out utilities have lots of it, and it's actually very good data about what customers are looking to know. And so as we walk through the second piece of the presentation, I'll walk you through how we've used this data to really drive these things that we've been walking through, which are how do you increase customer service scores and the results that happen with that? How do you increase revenue? And how do you reduce your operating costs? The first piece of this is really, well, how are you measuring customer satisfaction? And this is a function of a few utilities that we started to deliver mobile applications and real-time data to customers and sort of watched what happened to the customer survey responses. So the first thing that you quickly is easily noticeable is that the average customer score goes up a little, but largely is unchanged through that process. The big impact is to those customers that are scoring us less than a 5. So these are the customers that are very vocal. They're very disappointed in the service offering. And you can see by providing them some information, you actually begin to provide them some control over how they're receiving the service. And those highly dissatisfied customers that cause most of the issues for utilities begins to completely disappear. And so over time, you see that these scores, those ones bringing you down on the customer satisfaction scores, are nearly eliminated in some cases. And what happens when you start to give people control around those self-serve options is they begin to use them. And so they begin to intuitively start to shift the channel in which they communicate with you to things that cost less money. And so these are things like signing up for e-bills or auto pay. They also come here for water-saving tips. Remember, reducing the amount of water they consume does reduce the amount of infrastructure you have to build over time, and so lowers the costs to your utility. And so you get this intuitive channel shift starting to happen. And then if you maximize that channel shift by giving folks the opportunity to auto pay and mail in their payments still like they always have, sign up on their bank to have it debited, give them the various apps, they can still call the customer service agents, pay online, get all the information they need, including through IVR or the automated phone systems. You can drastically drive channel shift. Channel shift is important for utilities as we go forward because it allows us to spend more money on infrastructure and less money on servicing our customers as we engage them to change their behavior. So if we engage our customers in this new contract that we want them to do different things than just turn on their taps, then we have to engage them, which means we're winding up talking to them. And if we do that via the phone, we simply can't afford it as utilities. Every single phone call that we take as a utility costs us about $10. If you communicate that same system or concern or resolve that same issue over the web, it may cost you just a few pennies. So these are the results of some of these programs around what is channel shift real. Can you really get channel shift inside the water utility industry? And so these are numbers from utilities that we provide services to, and you can see that over the course of really a short period of time, you can drastically improve the amount of self-service calls that customers are handling. And so this has huge impacts to costs as you go forward, and it actually increases the levels of customer service as we saw before. And so this next shift in engaging our customers really goes to changing the way we think about water utility and water service delivery to a point-of-sale system. And so the way we look at a meter now is the transaction point for a customer. In other words, it's just like the cash register at your retail store. It's where you have the most information about the customer, and it allows you to create a store-like experience if you can provide the data that point-of-sale system is collecting to your customers. So it provides this opportunity to provide this real-time data for customers, which for sure improves customer experience and allows you also then to communicate to your customers at a different level around incentives and penalties. So carrots and sticks, you now have opportunities for rate structures that you never had before. Because if you can give customers real-time information around how much water they're using and structure your rates in a way that puts the carrot and stick in the view of the customer, what you'll get is very large customer behavior changes, which drives down your costs and your utilities. You can also give them to this point of giving them what they want when they want it. Because you have the real-time data, you can now offer all kinds of flexibility around your billing. And so you can do things like bill them monthly, as you always have, do it electronically. Or bill them twice a week, bill them on payday. Bill them when they reach $100, which facilitates this new engagement and control for the customer. That also allows you to offer different flexible rate structures, either seasonality or even time-of-use water rates in water can drive how much infrastructure you're building. And so we're seeing it all over the world that water industry folks are now starting to look at time-of-use billing, which you can't do without a data-rich utility. You can also incentivize and understand what customer behaviors drive the margins in your utility, and then incent them so that their behaviors are aligned with the community's goals. The next piece goes to this getting the data right the first time as we go through building customer information systems and talking about customer information systems. We like to refer to as monetizing this hydrogeologic cycle with our customers and data. So we currently know we all bill for potable water and sewer rates, and we bill for recycled water. Oftentimes we'll put trash bills on the bills as well. But what we, I think, underestimate as a sector is how much money is flowing through our sometimes lack of control around data. And so everyone I've ever met in the utility industry has a story about how they found a meter that was buried and had been operational for 5 years or 10 years or never got into the billing system or was read and never billed to a customer. And through using and integrating all the various data streams that we have, from GIS to customer service to consumption data around AMI or advanced hourly read meters, you can pick up all this lost revenue. And in many cases where we've come to utilities, we're finding nearly half of all the non-revenue water in these data issues. And so these are homes that aren't being billed, or they're meters that aren't being read properly, or they're just simply data losses inside the customer information system. And because we haven't tied that to location in the past very well inside geographical information systems, we often don't have the quality control checks to find this revenue if we've lost it. And so this is a big source of opportunity for utilities to drive revenue up. So here's an example in one of our utilities, which I'm not very proud of, but it's a good point, is that as we looked at some of our commercial meter populations around exactly this point, what we found was a full 50% of them met the standard that they should have met. So I was happily reading at least half the water that was going through my commercial meter population, and so I was losing half the revenue. So another good chunk, 33% or so, did pretty well, between 50% and 97%. But then I had 8% that measured less than half the flow and I had 8% that basically measured 0. As we added up this loss in this particular utility around these very few meters, I think it was about 60 meters, it turned into $250,000 a year annually that was collected simply by doing the maintenance and watching the data and the flows that go through the meters. So the question we started asking ourselves is, well, if that's happening to commercial meter populations, I can't do an annual audit. That doesn't get me what I'm looking for from a revenue perspective. So how can I figure out when it's going to fail before it fails? Just like we do for well pumps or booster pumps or other things inside our utilities, there ought to be a way that we can look at the data coming from real-time metering and predict the failure of these large commercial meters. And it turns out you absolutely can. And so the analytics around taking these hourly read data and reviewing the variance of that data, what you quickly can determine is when commercial meters start to fail. You can order them ahead of time. You can fix them before they fail, and as a result, you can assure you are collecting the amount of revenue that you should be collecting. This is another thing that can be worked into business cases around lost revenue. Really stabilizes revenue for utilities. As we change out old meters and go to new meters that address accuracy and clean up the information inside customer information systems, we always see large increases in the amount of water that's actually consumed. This just goes to the fact that most of our non-revenue water is non-revenue water as a function of not collecting the data properly or measuring it properly. It's got less to do with the fact that that water is leaking out of large pipes someplace. And so here's an example of a utility that increased the amount of water they were billing by nearly 26% as a result of updating their meter population and running these analytics on a constant basis to ensure that they were collecting all the revenue they should. And we're seeing it in case studies and in our utilities and in the utilities that we provide services to. And it doesn't have to be all the meters in a particular community. This is a great example of where someone simply changed out 163 3-inch meters that represented less than 1% of the meter population, but over 15% of the revenue. And so it generated almost another $2 million a year in revenue from changing out simply 163 large meters. So many of these meter populations, I know these are large meters, but many of these studies, when you do them, will have paybacks in 1 to 2 years on changing out these commercial meter populations. It just goes, again, to the importance of data and then managing that data, because you can do this once and catch it, but then as soon as you do it, it starts to degrade. And if you don't have real-time data around it, then what you do is you wind up losing it again, which is just a shame. There's also dollars just simply in the data. So here's an example of revenue found in a particular utility by doing nothing more than cleaning up the data in the customer information system. So a geospatial audit based on tax parcel IDs and area photography to figure out where meters should all be and what codes should they be charged for as far as meter sizes or multipliers or even trash accounts. And so this is simply a monthly revenue increase of nearly $15,000 to $16,000. And what's most interesting about this particular example is, while that's a significant increase related to data, once you clean up the data, it turns out you bill all those customers far more accurately and make far less adjustments on their bills. And so while that may generate $300,000 to $400,000 in additional revenue as a result of the data cleanup, and the resulting of better operations, it increased this utility's bottom line $1.63 million. Again, we see it in many, many places. When we go through and replace meter populations, water losses are drastically reduced, bill volumes are greatly increased, and the revenue associated with it is significantly increased. And this just goes to the fairness of how we're billing for water in our utilities. So those that use more and are measured for more pay more. Those that use less pay less. And as we go forward, it's those who are consuming the resources are paying for the resources. A few points on another business case example that often gets left out of these cases is the fact that bad debt and accounts receivable are greatly improved by real-time information. So, as we looked at Covina, California, the accounts receivable dropped 72%. So, from $205,000 to $37,000, and bad debt was cut by 60%. And in some cases, bad debt is sometimes 20% of a utility's revenue. And so as a result, this can be a significant one-time bump in bad debt collection. One-time bad and accounts receivable collection, and really an ongoing reduction in bad debt as a function of taking that data and running queries against the database and using your mobile applications and automated phone systems to outbound call customers to let them know that they're past due or they need additional funds. Sorry, sounds like everybody can't hear me so well. Is that better?
So we'll switch over to this different audio. Hopefully that's better for everyone. So anyways, as we go to the real-time data benefits, as we use this data in different and more interesting ways as we go forward inside our utilities, we're continually finding new ways that you can use this information to increase customer service, decrease your costs, and improve your revenue. And so all of this begins to come through on how we're using this data to really create a smart grid for water. And so how are we integrating in our location information, our SCADA data, our customer information systems, our work order management systems into what now is really smart grid for water. And so it's all of that data flowing in from customers into these robust systems and then back out into the utility to drive these efficiencies. And so it's more than billing customers with websites. It's about giving them this information. It's about giving them the comparisons we talked about, the real-time information, and ultimately the pieces of information that are going to allow them to change their behaviors to better the community and better your particular utility. And then once we give them the information, we have to increase the accessibility. So whether that's via websites or smartphones, and one of the things we think is very, very important going forward is simply getting folks to sign up for the various notifications that they're interested in, because that way you can provide personalized information when an event actually happens. So send me a text message when I've spent $10 worth of water today is something people actually care about and will rate you higher for in customer service, and will also impact how they then use your systems to eliminate the operational costs associated with the utility. And so as we go forward as an industry and as water utilities, we've always been able to rely on the supply side work that really our predecessors have done. And they've done a fantastic job of making sure we have enough water. And as a result, most of our society has never had to worry too much about where their water is coming from or learn how to truly efficiently manage their usage. But as we go forward and as water scarcity becomes a real issue and as the cost of operating water utilities continues to increase, we simply aren't going to have that luxury as we go forward. And so we need to learn more about our water, how we're using it, how we're interacting with our utilities, and ultimately that's going to require more data and our ability as utilities, really our responsibility as utilities, to deliver that data to customers in more new and interesting ways. So that's really the end of my presentation. So hopefully that was helpful for folks, and be happy to answer any questions.
All right, Jason, that was very good. So attendees, now is your opportunity to ask questions by typing them into that Q&A box that's in the bottom right corner of your screen. As you type those in, I will ask those questions of Jason. And I'll remind you again that this has been recorded, and so it will be available for replay if you need to have your colleagues listen and view this at a later date. And we keep those out there for quite a long time. So Jason,
it looked like we may have lost audio for a bit. Was that true, or?
Well, so yeah, I see that, but there were some notes that one person I think had lost audio and then said it's working again, Jason, and then the person said that they were fine. So I'm not quite sure what happened there. I know I had some background noise here, so I hit the mute button. So, Jason, if you're ready, we'll get started here. So your first question, it seems like real-time data could be useful for utilities, but I wonder how easy it is to realize the benefits when you have, say, 100,000 meters to change out. Do the benefits start to accrue immediately? As a corollary, is it possible to achieve these benefits in a phased approach?
Sure. Well, I think as you begin to engage your customers, the more you can engage your customers, these benefits begin to accrue. And so in many cases, however, if you're going to realize all the benefits of advanced metering infrastructure and hourly read data, many of those benefits don't occur until you have them all fully deployed. And so one of the reasons we started Fathom was so that folks could find different ways to finance changing out those meters, and then could also deploy the technology less in I'm going to build it all over the course of 10 years, but to simply rent it and deploy it incrementally over smaller populations. So for instance, Thames Water over in the UK is deploying many of our customer information systems across their just commercial populations, because they believe that those commercial populations represent some of the highest revenue and want to service them at a higher level. And so I guess the answer to that question is yes, you can begin to achieve these benefits with your customers very quickly and incrementally. It just sort of depends on the solutions you choose to achieve those benefits.
And I guess on that one point, you could also look at it by customer type or size of customer or something.
Sure, absolutely. By meter size or customer type or geographic area, these are all ways that it makes sense to slice the implementation of these smart grid processes so that you can achieve those benefits in quickly and get quick wins. The other quick win that we always see that's worth talking about is going through and doing these geospatial audits around what data is in your customer information system and whether or not that's correct. We always have seen revenue increase from doing those audits for utilities. And so that's another way that you can often get that benefit and then really take the revenue that's being generated by billing your customers 100% properly and use that to fund some of these meter changeout programs, starting with commercial meters and then working from commercial meters into residential meters, and basically taking that pie of lost revenue and attacking the biggest slices first and using those savings to fund the next pieces.
So my own question on that, Jason, so is that generally due to your example earlier about found meters that had not been billed or had been read and never billed? Is that usually the suspect in that, or is there other places too?
Well, actually there's about 10 places where utilities lose data that results in lost revenue. I think if folks are interested, I've got an article on that we published around where those areas are. But it goes to meters that are in the field but not in the billing system. It goes to meters that are in the billing system but don't have customers assigned. It goes to meters that have are in the billing system, have customers assigned, but have the wrong multipliers associated with it. Turns out if you overbill a customer, they call. If you underbill a customer, they don't. And so there's lots of revenue that gets left on the table in that manner. And there's a host of other little things that happen inside customer information systems that are places where it's very simple to lose revenue and very difficult to catch without sort of advanced analytics running in the background looking for those types of issues.
That sounds interesting. So attendees, on that last point, if you want that article from Jason, if you don't have Jason's email, just contact Lisa at the office and she'll get that material to you. So moving to another question, generally people are unaware of their water consumption. What makes you think that having data available means a customer will seek it out? And then next question, will people really use a mobile app for consumption?
Yeah, so hopefully as we walk through the presentation, I gave you some real examples of where by providing this information, consumption has been reduced, and in many cases significantly reduced. In many cases, if you go to Australia, all of the business cases around deploying smart infrastructure or data are prefaced on the idea that they're going to be able to shift, basically change behaviors of customers to fund this infrastructure, so they get to build less reservoirs and things like that. So they've already seen that by giving customers data, they get these reductions and they get this shift in usage. And so that I think is now a fact that can be studied and used in business cases. When you go to start talking about will customers use mobile applications or websites, I think that the world or the people's expectations around customer service are changing so fast right now as a function of, I mean, just think back 5 years ago, you wouldn't have had an Android phone where you could do many of the things you can do today. And so people's expectations around those devices are accelerating very rapidly, and you see that in their consumption of data. You see it really worldwide in their consumption of data. And so I think as this information becomes available, and it's becoming available not only from water utilities but from all other kinds of service providers, there's an expectations for customers that they're able to do these things. I know I have an expectation when I get on an airplane with a provider that I've never flown before that I can quickly download their application and check my flight status, right, without having to call someone. And so those expectations are shifting very, very rapidly, and I think we do ourselves a disservice if we don't recognize that those expectations are changing for customers and then begin to see how we can adapt as utilities to those changing expectations. So I do think that as we go forward into the future, you will see much more website adoption, much more e-billing adoption, much more text message billing, and things of that nature working themselves into the water utility industry specific to try and change these behavior patterns, because they have such a big impact on what our cost structures are as a utility. So, did I answer the question?
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point, particularly on the use of mobile applications there at the end. Jason, so another question. I know I have errors in my data. It seems to me that those errors would simply contaminate any new system or platform. What should I do to not allow that to happen, the contamination to happen?
But I love that question because it's a source of frustration that really was the impetus for some of the process changes around Fathom. So we deployed many of these standard customer information system deployments, and what we always had to do was convert our old data into our new billing system and take our existing business processes and convert them into our new billing system. And as we ran those utilities, I was always frustrated by the fact that what I really got when I bought a customer information system in many cases was exactly what I had before with better user interfaces. And really what I wanted was better customer service, more revenue, and less costs. And the only way to really do that was to go back to the source of the data, so rooftops, tax parcel IDs, and do these geospatial audits to make sure that the data is perfect, and then work with other utilities to get the best practice business processes into my utility so that I could generate all those benefits. And so when we created Fathom so that many small and mid-sized utilities that couldn't afford that process could simply rent the investment in information technology and business processes that Global had already invested and continues to invest in, so that they get those benefits without having to go through that same, what I found to be a frustrating process. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, it is. Attendees, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up today. And so starting with Jason, I enjoyed your material and your presentation. I thought it was a great presentation. Thank you for bringing that to us today. Attendees, thank you for participating today. And I would like to wish all of you a happy Thanksgiving, and hopefully you'll all be done working by lunch tomorrow. So this webinar will be again next month on the third Thursday. And on that note, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. So Jason, you can stay on for a minute if you like.
Great. Well, thanks everybody for attending. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day, especially this holiday week.